This last section, we're going to talk about goods. Goods is another aspect that will shape self-interest. Economists talk about it a great deal. A good is something that can be consumed. If you remember, when we talked about the conflict perspective, we were talking about resources. And the conflict perspective argued that groups compete over resources. Same idea here. A good is something that can be consumed. And what I'm going to argue in about 5 minutes is the idea that the type of good that we have shapes the type of social disorder that we're likely to find. So, there are 4 types of goods. Let's look at each one. The first one is very, very familiar to you. These are private goods. So we're talking about Manola Blahniks. These are great shoes. If you don't have a pair, I recommend you get one. The Toyota FJ Cruiser. I love this car. It's phenomenal. It's like you can drive on the side of a mountain. This is a McMansion. This is a private good. You've got your Prada bag with dog accessory that comes with the bag. I believe when you buy the bag, you get the dog. That's a Chinese crested dog. And of course, we've got the iPhone. These are all private goods. So what are the important characteristics of a private good? First, they are excludable. It's my personal iPod. I am the only person who owns this iPod. iPhone, Prada bag, car, whatever you're talking about, the important aspect of a private good is that it's yours. It's excludable. You can't, it doesn't have to be shared. It belongs to you. It's rival. If I am using it, then you are not. So the examples I can offer are, again, any consumer good, clothing, electronics, potato chips, anything that can be sort of bought in the marketplace. So those are private goods. Just keep that in mind. There are these things called private goods. On the other side of the spectrum, and I mean the other side of the spectrum, we have public goods. Now, public goods kind of don't exist. They're sort of an ideal that we sort of strive towards. But one is world peace. If world peace existed, it would be a public good. Clean air. If we had clean air, it would be a public good. So what are the important defining characteristics of public goods? First, they are non-excludable. You can't keep anyone from consuming them. If we have world peace, if we achieve world peace, you can't stop somebody from consuming world peace unless you end world peace. Do you understand that? If the United States went to war with Canada and ended world peace would be over. But if we have world peace, no one can be excluded from consuming world peace unless you end it. The second part is that it's non-rival. It's not subject to crowding. My consumption of world peace does not decrease your access of world peace. It's a win-win scenario. If we can achieve world peace, you win, I win, and my enjoyment of world peace does not stop your enjoyment of world peace. So again, public goods are sort of ideals that we might strive towards, but they don't exist in reality. The other 2 types of goods we're going to talk about do exist, so let's focus on them a little bit. The first is collective goods. These are also called club goods. The important aspect of this is that it's for members only. So the first things that should jump to your head are fraternities, sororities, in one level. At another level, nation states. Think about the United States. Think about our national security. If you are a citizen of the United States, you enjoy the benefits of national security. So what are the defining aspects of this type of good, the collective good? Important thing, it is excludable. Only members of the given club are allowed to consume this good. If I'm in a fraternity and I throw a party, the party is the good. Only members of the club are allowed to consume this good. We can exclude non-members. Hey, you want to come into our party? Yeah, you're not a member. Okay, yeah, you're not allowed in. It's excludable. It's non-rival. Within the club, the good is not subject to crowding. If you're throwing a fraternity party, my enjoyment of the party does not sort of take away from my brother's enjoyment of the party, theoretically speaking. If you think about something like national security, hey, look, I feel safe. I don't feel like terrorists are trying to kill me. Members of anybody who is a citizen of the United States who is protected by our military, we are all allowed to consume national security. We all feel safe inside the borders of the United States. And it's not subject to crowding. My enjoyment of our national security does not take away from your enjoyment of national security. If our military keeps us safe within our borders, it's keeping all of us safe. It's not subject to crowding. So we've got one more type of good left. That is called common goods. These are not as large as public goods. So what are the defining features of common goods? What are some examples? Well, international water, where we have international fishing, is a common good. Anyone who can take their boat to this water can fish it. Nobody is excluded from fishing in international water. The other example we have is this green pasture filled with lambs. Eventually, one day, in one of your classes other than sociology, you might read a story called The Tragedy of the Commons. It's a story about, I believe it's a place in England, where anyone could take their sheep to graze. Anyone. So, people would bring their sheep to graze. And more people brought their sheep to graze, and more people brought their sheep to graze, and more people brought their sheep to graze. Eventually, there was no land left for the sheep to graze. There's no food for them. And it's called the tragedy of the commons because if they would have taken care of the commons and they would have, let their sheep graze little by little and taken turns, then it could have been sustainable. Instead, anybody could come in, so everyone brought their sheep, and suddenly there was nothing left. Your public library. Think about your library. You go in there, you get a card, you can take out lots of books, you can read the books while you're there. As long as you're there, you can pick up any book off the shelf and just read it. At the Joshua Tree Library, I've seen people who are clearly not citizens of California, people here that are tourists, sit down and use the internet. It's a complete collective good. Common good. So what is a common good? Common goods are non-excludable. No one can be excluded from consuming this type of good. If you can walk into the library at Joshua Tree, you can use the internet. If you can pick a book up off the shelf, you are welcome to read a book at the library. Now here's the deal about common goods. They are subject to crowding. If I go to the library and I grab a book off the shelf and start reading it, you can't read it. Anyone can go into the library and grab a book, but once I have the book, I've got it. So that's a common good. So, why are we learning about all these goods? Private goods, common goods, collective goods, public goods. Why are we learning about this? Well, we care about social order, and the argument I'm making here is that the type of good shapes the type of social disorder we are likely to find. So, let's look at social disorder. Stealing is defined as taking from the system without paying for the good. Private goods like cars and phones and televisions, those things can be stolen. If you work at a store, people can steal the things at the store. If you own a store, people can steal from the cash register. They're stealing your money, and the money, as the owner, that's yours. It's your private good. So private goods have to deal with stealing. So let's think about this for a second. How do you solve the problem of stealing? How do you create social order when somebody's stealing from you? Well, I'm going to give you the answer. The most common solutions to stealing is increased monitoring, increased enforcement, increased, basically it's all about authority. I'm not saying I agree with the strategy, but this is a very common strategy. Now, the other side of this is free riding. Free riding is taking from a system but not giving back to the system. collective goods, common goods, and public goods all suffer from this type of social disorder. Think about welfare. Welfare is a common good. We all benefit from the welfare system. If I lose my job tomorrow, I know that I could go to the welfare office and I could apply for welfare. And that's good because that might stop me from, starving. We all benefit from having a welfare system. But is it possible people are free riding on the system of welfare? Yes. Well, it doesn't just apply to welfare, it applies to many things. All of your friendship networks are basically common goods. How many of you probably go to your friends when you need help? Your friends are a common good. If you need a ride to school, if you need a ride to work, if you need somebody to babysit your kids, if you need somebody to help you move, if you need somebody to drive you to the airport, you call up your friends, right? Now, that's a common good, having people there to help you out. But I assume many of you have had a free rider in your life. Somebody who always asks for favors, but when you ask for a favor, they say no. In sociology and economics, we call this free riding. Somebody who's taking from the system but not giving back. It's different than stealing. Most stealing has to do with monetary value. It deals with private goods. You can steal a car, you can steal money, you can steal a television, you could steal a phone, you could steal lots of things. But when you are free riding, it's not about money. It's more about a different amount of thing. So people sometimes free ride on carpooling. People will free ride on cigarettes. People will free ride on babysitting. People will free ride on food. Come over to your house and eat all your food. And it doesn't have to be a one-to-one payback where, like, if I had to go to your house and make dinner, you come to my house and make dinner. It doesn't have to be one-to-one trade. Maybe you babysit my kids, and next week I drive you to work all week. That's not free riding. That's an exchange, and that sounds fair. The idea of free riding is someone who's taking in some way, but not giving back in some way. And like I said, collective, common, and public goods all suffer from this problem. So you have to ask, how do you solve the problem of free riding? It's a problem of social disorder. People who are free riding are not cooperating with the group. How do you solve that free riding problem? How do you create order when somebody's free riding? That's actually what the question you're going to have to address next week in your module. So I want you to think about free riding in your life and how you solve that situation.